Rev up your engines!
All right, the Koreans have done it. Hyundai in Korea is now using artificial intelligent robots at their dealerships to help them sell cars. The robot is called Doll-E, kind of close to Daleks if you are into Doctor Who. I mean, they were evil. The image of salesman isn't all that good either. Now, what I want to know is, are they programming these robots to be deceitful, to sell people things? Or are they programming them to sell them all accessories and things that people don't really need or don't even want, but try and push them to buy that? Or having them push people to buy the extended warranty? I mean, how far are they going with these robots? It's a 4-foot tall robot, and they're using it in Korea in a Hyundai dealer. Now, the name comes from Drive You, Assist You, Link You, Experience. I could have come up with something a little catchier than that, but hey, you know. So if you think it's bad dealing with pushy salesmen, hey, now you might have to deal with pushy robots, too. Storm and Norman says, I got an 06 Lexus GX470, 190,000 miles. Great SUV, but recently it loses power acceleration while going up steep hills from time to time. The RPM will go to 3,000 K while the speed drops to no higher than 45 miles an hour. What's wrong? First thing you do is have it tested. Do not guess. And you need 2 tests, and they're very simple tests. One test is have a mechanic check the catalytic converter to see if it's starting to clog up. All we do is, before the catalytic converter, there's an oxygen sensor. We take it out and we put a gauge in there. And then we measure the pressure. And if the pressure's too high, it means the catalytic converter's clogged up. That will do the same thing. Second, have the fuel pump tested. Now, first change the fuel filter, because it could just be a clogged filter. That's a simple thing. Change that, right? If it still does it after you change the fuel filter, pressure test the fuel pump. Because if the fuel pump isn't putting enough fuel going up a load where it really needs power, that's exactly what it'll do. And then, pray it's one of those, because if it isn't, it could be the transmission starting to go out. And rebuilding the transmission on an 06 Lexus V8 engine is a small fortune. California Guy 21 says, I know people recommend Corolla Civic Camry Accord for first car, but what do you think of a 2010 or so ES350? I'm wondering, how is the same generation Volvo S80 non-turbo? For the price of a Camry, I can get a better quality ES. Yeah, you could get a 2010 ES for the price of a new Camry, but 2010 Camry is going to be much cheaper than a 2010 ES. Now, if they are the same price, there's probably something wrong with the ES, or the ES has just 300,000 miles and the Camry's only got 100,000 miles. But that said, the ES are excellent vehicles. You know, you're going to pay more for a Lexus. They're more expensive cars. I mean, I would have never bought one other than I got one for $3,000. It's $300 for my wife, and it only had 65,000 miles. It was a customer's father's car who died of a heart attack. Customer didn't want it, so it was. I'm a mechanic. I got lucky buying that one. You're never going to find a Camry and a Lexus the same type of year mileage, the same price, unless there's something wrong with the Lexus, or you're like, I got a great deal because the guy's father died of a heart attack. He didn't need a car, so he sold it to me. Get what you want. If you like the quality, get the Lexus. But if you want to pay less and get cheaper insurance, and it'll last just as long, if not longer, get the Camry. Frank from Germany says, hey, I got 06 1.4 Honda Fit, 100,000 miles. I bought it used. When the engine's warm and I drive with low acceleration around 2,000 RPM, the engine breaks down for a second. Then it starts going again. The workshop can't figure out the issue. They check the spark plugs. Hey, I thought the Germans were good mechanics there, you know? You find yourself a better mechanic. There's always a reason vehicles break down. Now, on that, it could very easily be the fuel pump cutting out and then coming back in. But any mechanic worth their salt, good scan tool, one that costs $2,000 to $6,000. I don't know what that is in euros. They'll road test it. When it does that breaking down, it stops accelerating, that data's memorized. And then a good mechanic analyzes it and said, okay, here's the problem. And I might say, okay, you are losing fuel or you're losing spark. But that information is readily accessible. So start with a better mechanic. And I'm guessing it could easily be the fuel pump is starting to wear out. It's what, 15 years old? And the fuel pump gets weak. It can do just that. And before you go any further, I'd just say change the air filter and the fuel filter. It might fix it. Just change both of those. Easy thing to do, change the air filter to the fuel filter. If it stops, that's what it is. And then send me a case of Oktoberfest beer from Germany. Mr. Bob says, Scotty, I recently bought a Kia Sorento. The engine shuts off when you stop and wait at traffic lights. To save the battery, the heater blower shuts off too. It's 19 degrees out today. I called the dealer and asked if they could disable it. They said, no, it can't. Is this how all cars are headed? Well, only poorly made ones. I can't understand how that would be that way, that it also shuts off the blower when you need heat. That's got to be a flaw in the stupid Korean cars in the Kia. Toyotas have done that for ages with their Priuses. They turn themselves off when you come to a stop. They're well made. And the computer system allows even the heater to still work. And if you have AC, allows the AC to work and blow hot or cold air in your face, even when the engine's turned off. There's no way that it should turn the blower off. I think they're giving you a line of baloney. It's like you say, it's 19 and you're freezing outside. So I think that is a total load of baloney the Kia deal is getting you. I would really look into that and raise a stink because, like I say, Toyotas, they don't shut it off. Even the Fords that I've been in, that they shut the car off, they still run the blower in the heat so you don't freeze if you're sitting there waiting. So look a little research on that and see what they say. It sounds like a lot of baloney to me. It sounds like yours isn't working right. Maybe it needs reprogramming to allow the fan to blow while the engine's turned off, because that makes no sense. Now, if it actually is true, then the people at Kia are idiots, selling a car where people are cold, where the heater is going to work when they're stopped at a light. I don't know. I don't think they're that stupid. I think yours is actually flawed. Jasparian 22 says, I'm looking at a 2017 Honda Civic, 32,000 miles with a rebuilt title. What should I look for? They want 10 grand. Run away from that one. 10 grand for a car that was totaled by an insurance company. You know why the insurance companies totaled them? Because they say the damage is more than the car's worth. Run away from that thing. That's a crappy deal. Now let's say it was 5 grand for one with 32,000 miles. You would pay a mechanic like me to check it out. I mean, we might say, hey, it's okay. I've had customers bring me rebuilt titles. They were all totaled by an insurance company. And I checked them out and they were decent vehicles. And I said, okay, the price isn't too bad. Go ahead and buy it. Now, most of the time I find things wrong. Electrical systems, they were flooded out. If I see they're flooded, I say just walk, because the electrical system can be destroyed. It could be months later that they'll act up. So don't ever buy a flooded car with a rebuilt title. But for that kind of money, for that, just walk away. Don't even think about that one. But if you do find a good one with a real good price, have a mechanic check it out that knows what they're doing like me, and he'll tell you yay or nay. Well, for you speed freaks out there who are worried because Suzuki isn't selling their Hayabusa in 2021, fear no longer. They're working on a revamp of it. Now, of course, that's one of the fastest motorcycles in the world. If you really have the hankering to go 188 miles an hour on 2 wheels. But realize one thing, the fastest Hayabusa ever made, still in history, was the 1999 Hayabusa, because it went 194 miles an hour. Well, 6 miles an hour faster than the new ones. And I know guys who had them and they modded them so they went over 200 miles an hour. But that still was the fastest production motorcycle you could buy that could go 194 miles an hour. They were rated for that. And now they only go 188. And Europe, I believe they have them tuned. They got a certain speed that you can't build them to go any faster. Of course, guys can bypass it when they buy them, but their speed limit is a little bit lower than that too. And in Europe, 2018, they stopped selling the Hayabusas because of their emission standards, that they didn't meet the emission standards. A lot of this stuff is total nonsense. How many guys are riding around on these little motorcycles that hardly produce any pollution anyway? Does it really matter? I mean, it's kind of crazy that, like in Texas, when I was living there, they didn't do emissions testing on motorcycles. They did it on cars, but they didn't do it on motorcycles. I mean, how many are out there? How much fuel do they burn? But of course, the Europeans, with all their regulations and tied knots to keep people from doing stuff, they haven't sold them there since 2018. But they do claim that in 2021, they're going to be able to meet the European standards, and they'll go back to selling the Hayabusas in Europe, even though they'll have electronic controls to make them go slower than the American models are. So don't worry if you want to go 188 miles an hour on a motorcycle. You can't buy a new Hayabusa 2021, but you will in 2022. Kaizen says, electric motors, why aren't transmission needed versus internal combustion engines? Well, actually, some of them do have transmissions for even more power. The basic ones don't. But the reasons they don't need a transmission, full torque, as soon as you turn them on. If you look at the ratings for an internal combustion engine, it'll always say like 190 horsepower at 4,500 RPMs. They don't put their full horsepower out until they're spinning real fast. Electric motors aren't that way. As soon as you flip the switch, they got full power. And that's why most of them don't have transmissions. But there's ones out there that have transmissions, so they can go super fast. Or in the case of a big truck, they can have super pulling power, because if you get all this power and torque and put it into a transmission, addition, you can even get more torque for pulling the things down the road, more power, and that's why. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.